So the very first thing that I want to mention is for real estate, it requires a lot up front. So it requires, we'll just say money up front. Okay, remember how I was saying that in our example, it was $20,000 for a down payment, right? It was $20,000. In stocks, you don't need a minimum amount really, as long as you can pay for one stock. Stocks can be from a few bucks to what's Warren Buffett's is hundreds of thousands, right? Berkshire Hathaway. So you can theoretically invest any amount of money you want in stocks, but for a home, you're going to need a minimum of $15,000 if it's a crappy home, and all the way up to whatever. So you need a lot of money up front for real estate. What's another thing I want to say? Oh yeah, so it's real estate, rental real estate is, it's very risky if you do not have a tenant. So if you don't have someone renting your property in a rental real estate market, you are stuck paying everything by yourself. So you're stuck paying the mortgage, utilities, and if you have your own place and this place, those bills are going to add up, and you're going to need to either do a lot more work in your full-time job, or you're just going to have to you're going to have to sell the place maybe if you don't get a tenant. So it's very risky. Stocks, they aren't that risky. If you were to invest in Coca-Cola is not going bankrupt tomorrow, right? You're never going to lose money on a stock investment unless you sell it for less than you bought it for, which is dumb, which I talk about in another video. So you will never flat out have a negative cash flow in stocks. You will always either have the same amount if you're smart or make more money in dividends. No matter what, you're getting dividends, okay? And you'll never have money taken out of your account, while in real estate, you can't have money taken out of your account because of the mortgage and the bills and all that, right? So one more thing I want to talk about is, oh yeah, obviously. All right, so here we go. Work. So stocks, for example, you can do, what I do is I'll do somewhere between 5 minutes of research and an hour before I invest in a stock, or even less. So less than 10 minutes sometimes, if I know it's a good one. So in real estate, I can invest after 5 minutes in stocks. I can just go invest, it's on my computer and good. I've invested and it took 5 minutes. In real estate, you have to do a lot of research, and a lot of it's hands-on. You have to go see the place, you have to get an agent, you have to go sign the forms, and you have to pay fees, and you have to pay the upfront fees too. So you have to pay for inspections and lawyer fees and land transfer taxes and stuff like that, right? Oh, I may have just shut off my microphone there. But so real estate's a lot more work. You can't just jump in and invest whenever you want to. You actually have to put in time and effort, and finding a tenant too. So in order to flat out make your money, you have to go out and find your tenant or pay a property management company 7% or more. And in stocks, you don't really do anything. You just invest, and it's like, oh, cool, I got my 4% back 3 months later, right? Or I guess every 3 months you'd get theoretically 1%. Whatever. But so those are just the main that's the main comparison that I found when trying to research the difference between these two. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about that right now. So just hang on, click on to my next video. This is part 1. We're going to talk about part 2 in the next one. So stick with me. Okay, everyone, welcome back to part 2 of this. Now, in the last video, I kind of compared a little bit about real estates and stocks. And this, it's going to be a lot of the similar information, but I'm going to be talking about which one is right for you. Which one should you invest in? Now, I've already mentioned that in rental real estate, you can make a lot more money if you do it right. I've already talked about that. Go check out my last video if you want to see that. And, excuse me, in stocks, you generally make less, but you make less money, but you don't have to put in as much work. That's just the general thing I covered, and I did an example too in my last video. So go check it out. So part 2, we're gonna just kind of do an overview here of what I talked about already. So in real estate, you need a lot of money up front for down payment. So you need a big down payment, which is tough and requires maybe 2 years of savings for the most part. In stocks, you can invest anything, right? Invest any amount. Invest any dollar amount. Okay? So that's a big difference for me. So if I wanted to invest $500 for my computer, that'll be done in 5 minutes. And down payment, you have to save for years, and then you have to go research. So here's what else I'm going to get to. Here's the other thing I'm going to get to. So you need to meet certain requirements for real estate investment too. So you actually need $100,000 in net worth to buy a rental property. So you need $100,000 in net worth. Oh, whoops, and that is wrong. $100,000 net worth. And in stocks, you theoretically need a net worth of 0. Well, 0, I mean, like you have to have free money, right? But you don't have to have any large amount of net worth to invest. Like I invested when I was 18, right? I had a corporate job, but saying that I by no means had anywhere close to $100,000 in net worth when I was 18. So, excuse me, I have a cold, so that's why my voice is kind of like this. So in real estate, if you were just to purchase the home, you're going to see an average no work return from appreciation of 3 to 4%. So we're just going to say 4% appreciation. I mentioned this in my last video. So if you just wanted to invest in a property and do nothing, it's a lot less, it's not as worth it as stocks, because stocks, if you were to invest and do nothing, you're going to see a 6 to 8% return. If you're just to invest in the S&P 500. So again, stocks, a lot less work. You need nothing up front for the most part, and you get a solid return, right? So 4% appreciation in real estate. Now, in terms of the ways you make money, in real estate, you make it from rent. You get appreciation, so we're just going to call it AP for appreciation. And you also, if you rent out the place, you gain equity because someone else pays your mortgage for you. We talked about it in my last video. So you have 3 sources of gaining value, I guess I should say. And over here, you get dividends, which is cash, free cash. Over here, you get dividends, and you get capital gains, which is the equivalent of, appreciation. So over here, you got 3 ways that you're gaining money from real estate, and over here, you have 2 ways that you're gaining money from stocks. So you have more options in real estate here. All right, so we're going to reset. So already this is kind of telling you that, rental real estate has a lot more upside, but stocks are a lot safer, a lot less work, and require nothing up front. That's what I'm getting at here. So, again, real estate is very hands-on. Even if you have a property manager, it is very hands-on. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to physically go to the place and see what you're buying. In stocks, it's very hands-off. Hands-off. Now, here's another thing, is that real estate, so in terms of going out and getting a tenant and having that cash coming in, you have control for the most part. You have control over money. You have control over your cash flow. Because if you don't go out there and get a tenant, then you won't get any money. But if you work really hard, I'm sure you can get a tenant and you can bring in some money, right? So for the most part, real estate's under your control. Now, if you buy in a bad area, sometimes it's not in your control. Sometimes you will never be able to find a tenant. For the most part, you can control the money you make in real estate. In stocks, if you invest in a company, you pretty much have no control over what happens, right? You put in your money and the market determines the value of the stock, right? So the market and the company itself will determine how much it's going to pay you, how much this value of the stock will go up. I guess in real estate, the appreciation is dependent on the market, but saying that, as I said, that rent is somewhat dependent on your willingness to go out there and get a tenant. So you have a little bit more control in real estate. So what goes along the lines of that is real estate, you need to put in time. Lots of time. Lots of time. And in stocks, I've made investments where I've spent 5 minutes researching. So, real estate, by the time you want to invest, actually from the time you want to start saving for the down payment on a rental property until the time you purchase a home, that could be, if you have no money, that could be 3 years, maybe if you do it correctly. 3 years for most people. And in stocks, if you have $50 to $100, you can go buy a stock. Now, I recommend that you spend at least $500 because there's commissions and stuff and you have to make up for that. So theoretically, $500, that's, if you save it properly, that's if you can do that in a couple weeks to make $500 in extra spending money, right? So theoretically, the time commitment is much less in investing in the stock market. Let's see here. So I mentioned this in my last video too. There's a lot more risk that comes in real estate. And stocks, they can be safer. So I should say that, I should word this a little bit differently actually. So there's a lot more risk for cash flow, I should say, not in value. And then there's not as much risk in cash flow in stocks. So I mentioned this already in my last video about how if you were to get a rental property and you can't rent it out, you are going to have a negative cash flow. You're going to have to pay for the mortgage yourself, right? You're going to pay for the bills yourself, the tax, everything yourself. If you rent it out, they are paying for hopefully all of that and an extra few $100. But in stocks, you will never have a negative cash flow unless you sell for less than you bought. And even then, it's not technically a negative cash flow, I guess. No one's taking money out of your account for no reason, like the mortgage would here. Right? In stocks, if you were to buy and hold all of your stocks, sure, the value could go down, but you're always going to be getting dividends. All right? Not all of your stocks are going to stop paying dividends at the exact same time. It's not possible. So I have a few more that I want to get to here. Two very important ones, which I should have mentioned maybe first, actually. I should have mentioned some of these first. So, oh crap, I erased the right here. Whatever. So two more important ones that I want to mention. So